This is chapter 6, page 130. We don't need to know a whole lot from chapter 6, so this will be fairly short. This case study is about Costa Rica's forests and how they were being deforested at a rapid rate in the 1980s. And so, to mitigate that issue, Costa Rica did a couple of things. One of the things that they did is they paid private landowners to conserve forests, and they paid them by taxing fossil fuels. And that was really important, and it helped also fuel the ecotourism industry in Costa Rica, and it helped bring back the forests. And that's important because forests provide us with many ecosystem services, and there are some listed right here, and you should know all of these. It could be a FRQ, so make sure that you read through these. We're going to flip over to page 136. John Muir was a preservationist, which means that he believed that the environment should not be touched and it should be left alone. And he liked to go out in the Sierra Nevada and go and backpack and explore and things like that. And he met with Teddy Roosevelt, and he took him along with him to Yosemite and other areas along the western United States. And it inspired him, and this is a picture in Yosemite, and it inspired Teddy Roosevelt to preserve 5 new national parks. Gifford Pinchot is another man who was a conservationist, which means that he believed that you should use resources but in a sustainable way and not deplete them. And he founded the U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service, unlike national parks, allows people or companies to cut down trees as long as they replant them. And so him and John Muir did not get along because they had differing philosophies. Aldo Leopold is famous for writing a lot of books, including a Stan County Almanac, and he believed that humans and nature are connected, and he believed in the intrinsic value of species and organisms, which just means that he believes that they have a right to survive just for survival means. And so that goes in with the view, or with the fact that we need ecosystem services. Humans need the ecosystem in order to survive, so we are connected. Down here is a definition of environmental justice, and environmental justice is enacting laws and policy to ensure that there is fair treatment of all people. And historically, it has been shown, not just in the United States, but all over the world, that the poor and minorities are exposed to a greater share of pollution, hazards, and poisoning. And so in Houston, you can see this kind of on the east side of Houston. If you look at a racial dot map, it is mostly, most of the population is Hispanic, and there are a lot of oil refineries, a lot of chemical industry, a lot of Superfund sites which is where toxic waste is kept, the sites where they're kept, and a lot of things like that on the east side of Houston. And so there is a correlation between that. In 2015, there was a study by the state the state of Texas did, that showed that there was a higher rate of cancer in East Houston, and they included Pasadena, Deer Park. They didn't quite include Galena Park in their study, but those eastern areas where there are those refineries, they did find a higher rate. Now, they didn't relate that with pollution or with anything like that, but it is important to note that those things are there. And other examples are the Navajo, Native Americans, and uranium mines. This is the example that your book gives us. And African Americans in Louisiana, that lived near vinyl factories, and they were exposed to things like lead. And another example is Flint, Michigan. This is a very recent event where people were subjected to lead poisoning. There was lead in the water, and it was primarily people of color and African Americans that lived in the areas where that was happening. And we'll talk more about that later. We're going to flip to page 148. So know this figure and caption of non-market values, and these are things that have values that we don't pay for, or we don't generally pay for, but they're still important. So aesthetic value, just going out in nature and being in awe of the beauty. Scientific value, educational, cultural, all these things. Existence value, the worth of knowing that something exists even if we never experience it ourselves. We're going to flip over. Actually, I think that is the last thing that you need to know for chapter 6.